Hello, and thank you for checking in. We're going to do our lesson today sort of as video notes, unless your sub is able to use the technology in the room and go through these slides. So I'm going to have this as a backup in case we need it. All right, so hopefully you have gotten out your Unit 1, Lesson 1 notes. They say, what is an ecosystem right at the top? So you want those notes, you want to have a pencil, and you'll need your computer, but go ahead and keep it closed for right now. And I want you to think about the answers to these warm-up questions. All right, so look through your notes. And I want you to think about what is a word that means something that was never alive. So looking at your notes, see if you can answer this before I tell you. But that word, of course, is abiotic. So remember, bio means life. And when we put that A before the word, it makes it the opposite. So instead of being lifelike, we're going to say it is not lifelike. Abiotic means it's something that was never alive. Okay, so now we want to think about the word that means something that is or once was living. This word is biotic. Again, bio means life, so if it is biotic, it is lifelike, and our word is biotic. Finally, look at your notes or try to remember on your own, how would you define an ecosystem? So I want you to please remember that an ecosystem is just an area where biotic and abiotic factors interact with each other. So when I say factors, I mean things. This is an area where biotic and abiotic things interact with each other. All right, so hopefully you remembered some of that. Hopefully you have found your notes. You can always check the black basket to see if there are extra copies of notes if you have misplaced yours, but I don't know if we have extras anymore. You're welcome to look. All right, so what exactly is an ecosystem then? We said it's an area with biotic and abiotic things. And so looking at this picture, it's an ecosystem. So biotic things that I have in here, I have these plants that are alive down in the water, right? And the water itself is not alive, but the plants are. This bunny is alive. This, whoopsie daisy, sorry. This tree is alive. Whatever these are, maybe flowers, who knows? They're alive, right? So we have a lot of living things. Those are the biotic things. Then, if I look at non-living things, water is an obvious non-living thing, right? It's not alive. Soil, we will say soil is not alive in this class. And I have, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I keep clicking that. We have air in this whole area. And so air, has oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen. All of those things in the air are not living. Those are abiotic. And also you can see we have our sun. So the sunlight is important to this ecosystem, and the sunlight itself is abiotic. All right, so look at your notes. You already have information on your notes, but I want to make sure that you have definitions for each of these things and examples. So pull out your notes and we're going to go through these. All right, so the beauty of doing this as a video lesson is you can pause if you need to and make sure you've got everything written down. Your definition might be slightly different phrases or different words, but just make sure it means the same thing. These are words that will show up on your quiz next week. All right, so an organism right here. Organism, that is, it's going to be an individual living thing, one living thing. So examples would be like a frog or a mushroom, a corn stalk, or a cow. There are lots of other examples. So when I think about the word biotic, remember biotic is actually an adjective. It is describing things. So biotic itself, that word means living or once living. We typically will say biotic things, or we will say biotic factors. So biotic is living or once living, and we are going to talk about the things or the factors. Examples are going to be just like the organism examples. In this case, though, we can have more than one, okay? So when you're talking about an organism, just one single thing. But when I talk about biotic factors, we're going to say that can be animals or plants or fungi or bacteria or humans, lots of options there. The word abiotic, remember, it is the opposite of biotic, so it's non-living things. These things have never been living. We think about water and clouds and oxygen, sunlight, temperature. There are lots of different abiotic factors too. Okay, and for an ecosystem, we already defined that, and we said an ecosystem is an area where biotic and abiotic factors interact or do things together. All right, so examples of ecosystems would be the desert or a forest, a swamp, a lake, maybe an ocean. So in each one of these areas, we have living things and we have non-living things. All right, so here's another example right here. When I look at only biotic factors over here in this picture, I have a tree, or many trees rather, some birds, I have some bears. There's probably grass on the ground. I'm going to jump over to the right side. These are my abiotic factors. I have rocks, I have water, I have some soil or dirt, and I probably have some clouds and some precipitation over here. When I combine the biotic factors with the abiotic factors in the center here, now I have everything. This is an ecosystem. As soon as I have abiotic and biotic together and they're interacting, like this bear is drinking water, right? That means it's an ecosystem. All right, so think about this. Try to answer before I click, and think about whether a fern is biotic or abiotic. It's biotic. A mouse, is it biotic or abiotic? It's biotic. Water, abiotic, right? Oxygen is abiotic. And finally, fungi or mushrooms, those are going to be biotic. They're living. All right, we're going to do that again with some more examples. Bones. Think about this. Remember, we said that things that are that ever were alive, we're going to call them biotic, even if they're not currently living. So firewood is biotic, right? Remember how we talked about that? So in this case, bones, they used to be living and growing in our bodies or in an animal's body, whatever bones these are. Bones are biotic. This is bacteria. What do you think? It is biotic. It is living. Right now, this is soil. So for soil, when we talk about soil in this class, we're going to call it abiotic. It's not living, but I do want to point something out. Sometimes we get soil from compost. If we are composting vegetables and foods that we didn't eat, for example, eventually they will break down and they will become soil. So I just want to clarify that in this class, if I'm talking about soil or dirt, I mean to call it abiotic, even though there are some cases where some of the product that you get from the ground is actually still coming from living things, but we're going to call it abiotic in here. Oh no, sorry, I gave you the answers. Temperature. Temperature matters to different organisms. Sometimes organisms have specific temperatures that they can live in. So this is an abiotic factor. It's not living, but it is a factor that matters to organisms that are growing in an ecosystem. And if I look at the grassy area here, that grass is growing, and I'm going to say grass is biotic. All right, and we're leaving the other stuff out on that slide. Okay, so look at this image. In what ways might biotic and abiotic factors interact with each other in the ecosystem below? Well, first I have to decide what's biotic and what's abiotic. So things that are living, oh my gosh, my mouse is sensitive here. Things that are living, I've got plants and flowers, right? Oh my goodness gracious, sorry. I've got this frog, I've got a lily pad, I've got a snail and a rock. Oop, rock is not living, sorry, things that are living. I've got ducks, I've got a dragonfly and this flower, more plants. I have some mosquitoes And down here I have some more plants and some fish. So there's lots of, forgive me for that mouse, it's really crazy. So I have lots of things that are living in here, and then my abiotic factors, my non-living factors, that would be the water, this rock, this dirt. We know there's sunlight. And let's see, what else do I have? There's air, right? So in the air I have oxygen and carbon dioxide. So how might these things be interacting? If I want one thing that's biotic and one thing that's abiotic, I might choose fish and water. So the fish are biotic, they're live, right? And they're swimming in the water. They're actually breathing oxygen from the water, because fish breathe oxygen through the water using their gills. These ducks are swimming in the water. This snail is living or crawling on a rock. These mosquitoes are flying in the air. So each time there, I've told you about one thing that was living and one thing that was not living. Okay, so think about those interactions. Are they always positive? Like, it's positive that it's a good thing that the fish is getting oxygen from the water and swimming around and having a place to live, right? But I've got fish and I've got ducks and frogs and things. These guys poop in the water, right? So poop can be a good thing or a bad thing. If there's too much waste, animal waste, then it's going to cloud up the water and make the water unclean and too murky, too much covered for those plants to survive well. So that can be a bad thing, right? But it also can be a good thing. So we know that interactions in those ecosystems, they can be good, they can be bad, or it depends sometimes. Sometimes it's good for one thing and not good for another thing. All right, so if you have your student agenda or any agenda where you write down your homework and things, I want you to please open it, and you're going to go to the date September 9, oops, I lied, September 10 and September 11. So periods 2 and period 8, periods 2 and 8, you guys are gray days. So you're going to put on Wednesday, September 11, on that date in your schedule, you're going to put that you have a quiz. All right, your quiz is going to be on ecosystems. So on all of those notes from lesson 1, the words like biotic, abiotic, organism, ecosystem. And also, you're going to have words and ideas from today's lesson too. So we'll get you some more notes today. But if you put this in your agenda or your planner, it'll help you remember that you might want to study. I have also put a reminder in Schoology on your calendar that you should see. All right. So you've got your lesson 1 notes out right now. Let me see if I can find. I want you to pull your lesson 1 notes out in front of you and look on the back page, the back side of it. And I want you to look for this chart. This is called a T chart because it makes the letter T right here. See how it makes the letter T? It's called a T chart. So we're going to answer some questions on this section right now. So you're going to be going to pretend like you're on a field trip, either going to the San Diego Zoo or going to Smithsonian National Zoo. Okay, so how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to let you do some webcams. So you're going to choose one of those 2 zoos to visit. You're going to pick at least one live webcam to watch. So you're going to click and you're going to watch and see what's happening. You might need more than one, depending on whether the animals are out so that you can see them. So as you're watching, I want you to write down all of the biotic factors you can come up with, the living things or things that were once living. So if it's a dead tree, or if somebody used a tree and used the wood from a tree to make a swing set, that's going to be a biotic factor, right? If it's a metal fence or a bunch of rocks, those are abiotic. So you're going to write down biotic and abiotic factors you can see. How do you get there? Well, you go to Schoology. You're going to choose your Schoology class period, and then click on this blue folder that says U1, it's Unit 1, Ecosystems. And this folder might be closed when you first look at your Schoology, or it might be open. You can click on that arrow to open or close it. All right, so once you click on it, or if you click on that down arrow, you should be able to see some things that I've got in Schoology for you. u1l1, that's Unit 1, Lesson 1, that's stuff that we used last class. Okay, and u1l1, we're going to go kind of to the bottom, and we're going to look for where it says ZooCam web links. All right, ZooCam web links, you might notice that this slides from class thing is a big set of slides, and you might have to scroll past it. So you're going to scroll until you find ZooCam web links, click on that, and then you're going to choose either San Diego Zoo or Smithsonian National Zoo. Choose one of those webcams. So if you look at your directions, it says assume the role of a zoologist. So that's your job in your mind, you're pretending. You are a zoologist at Smithsonian National Zoo or at the San Diego Zoo. You will choose a webcam to view. And as you observe the animals in it, I want you to fill out this T-chart. This is your T-chart right here, based on what you see. Please try to come up with 5 abiotic factors and 5 biotic factors. It may take some looking, and you may have to go to a different webcam. Whatever webcam you choose, write that down here. And if you chose more than one, just write both names, okay? All right, take 5 minutes. So you can have the timer on, or you can just be watching the clock a little bit. Take 5 minutes to watch your webcams and be writing down abiotic factors and biotic factors. Okay, so we have the giant pandas. I don't think you can watch them yet, but you can watch ferrets, and you can watch mole rats, and you can watch lions, maybe giraffes. Okay, so then I'm not going to have you trade T-charts because I'm not in the room with you, so I don't know if everybody's finishing at the same time. Instead, you can ask somebody near you to talk with you about these answers, but make sure you're being quiet, right? Low voices. So think about your answers to this question. What are the main abiotic factors present in a zoo environment? What are the biotic factors in a zoo environment? So talk that over. Hopefully you realize that you're going to have water. You might have to have concrete enclosures or metal fences and things. Those are abiotic. You're going to definitely have live animals. You might have plants for those animals to eat. You might have humans that you can see. So just check in with somebody else. You can pause the video and see if you came up with some similar factors. Then I want you to look at question 2. It says, how do zoos simulate natural abiotic conditions? So how do they copy what would occur in nature with things that aren't even alive? How do zoos simulate natural abiotic conditions to create suitable habitats for different species? Suitable means it's appropriate and it works for those species. So how are zoos going to create those areas using non-living stuff so that it's suitable for the different species that are living there? You can talk with somebody about this, think about it on your own, pause the video. And when you come back, hopefully you realize that, of course, zoos are going to use some abiotic things like water. We need water for the organisms that are living there, or if it's just plants, we need water. But here's an example. If you look at the reptiles, the snakes and things like that, think about what a reptile needs. Reptiles are cold-blooded. They can't make themselves warm, right? So you might have to have a heated rock inside the aquarium or the tank where the reptiles live so that they can warm themselves up. You might have some organisms that actually need a bit of humidity. Maybe they need more moisture in the air to survive. So the zookeepers have to come up with all the things that are going to make the animal or plant feel like it's in its natural environment. All right, just for a moment, you get to see the doggy timer. Just because it's fun. Okay, but I'm not really giving you 2 minutes of that since you can always pause if you need to. All right. So again, I'm not having you trade T-charts because you're not actually necessarily at the same place altogether. But I do want to make sure that you have thought about those answers and you have written something in those boxes. All right, this is a brain break. Again, I'm not going to run this for 3 minutes. You can pause it if you want to. You are looking for one of these humans that is not wearing a mask. Good luck. This is also a time that you might want to stand up and stretch just a little bit, walk around for just a minute, but please make sure you're not disturbing or distracting other people who are working. It's not a normal brain break. All right, so here we're going to identify each change that could happen in an ecosystem, and we're going to think about, is it a biotic change or is it an abiotic change? So if it's biotic, then it is a change that you can see in living things. But I have to clarify, this first line is a little confusing. So it says plant photosynthesis rates increase. So it means that the plants are doing photosynthesis more. The plants are behaving in a certain way. So think about that then. If the plants are behaving in a certain way, are the changes biotic or abiotic? And we're going to say biotic. So now think, what happens if my fish species populations increase? Suddenly I have more fish species. Well, fish are alive, so that's going to be another biotic factor. Aquatic, that just means it lives in water. Aquatic predator survival rates. So a predator is a bigger animal that eats smaller animals, preys on those smaller animals. So an aquatic predator survival rate, what I mean is that my aquatic predator animal is surviving, lasting better. Okay, so what's changing? Well, the predators, right? We've got more predators, and so that's biotic. And then I gave you away the answer for the bottom. Annual precipitation, remember that's rain or snow or sleet. Annual precipitation totals for an area increase. We suddenly have more rain or more snow or all of those things combined. Those are our abiotic factors. Okay, so that's an abiotic change. All right, so what are we doing today? We are going to understand how an ecosystem is organized. So we know a lot of the words, but we're going to understand how everything fits together. We're going to simulate an ecosystem in the classroom, and then you get to read, and you get to take notes, and you get to talk a little bit. Okay, please be careful with the cards, and I'm going to have the substitute teacher pause class at some point so that you can do this ecosystem activity. You're going to do it all together. Okay, why are you going to do it? It's because you want to understand how changes to one part of an ecosystem can impact the whole ecosystem. See and think and wonder. Get ready. What do you see? So you may see some sharks, you may see some fish, you may see some water. What do you think is happening? A lot of people wondered if these fish, or thought maybe these fish were eating these, the sharks were eating the fish, right? All right. What do you wonder about? So I had some people wondering, why aren't the sharks' mouths open if they're feeding? If the sharks aren't eating the little fish, why is that? So there are lots of things that you might wonder. I might wonder, is that a sea turtle? It looks like it. Okay, so we're going to do our ecosystem simulation. So I will ask the substitute teacher to hand out cards to everybody, and you're going to do the simulation. If for some reason that doesn't work out, I'm going to tell you what was happening during that simulation. But right now, if you've gotten to this point, you can pause and wait for instructions from the sub. All right. Once you have received a card, you will calmly and quietly scatter and see what cards everyone else has. Okay, just wander around the room, move like the organism that you have on your card if you have an organism. Try to look at other people's cards and see all of the different cards. What do you all have in common? You can talk with each other and think about it. But hopefully you noticed that all of these have something to do with water. Okay, fish live in water, snapping turtles live near water. We have lots of water things. Also, we have water quality, and we have rock and sand is near water. This guy is a bay scallop, so we have lots of water. Water. All right, so now I want you to move around and form a group with other people who have the same exact card as you. So there should be 8 groups. And so think about this. Maybe talk. So sorry, I'm still at school and that was the bell. Okay, so think about this and discuss it with your group. Have you ever seen the thing you're looking at in real life? Could be an organism, or it might be something else. It might be water or rock, sand. So are there 2 or 3 things that you might know about your item already? Think about that, talk about that. And I will tell you, all of the cards that I gave out represent things from Fairfax County where we live. So our fish, our sand, our rocks, our snapping turtle, our sea scallops, or bay scallops, I think they're bay scallops. We have a mayfly, and we have some protozoans, I think, little creatures in the water, and we have crabs. All of these are from Fairfax County. And also, we can measure water quality. We have a lot of water in Fairfax County. All right, so now you all have your cards. You have found a group of cards that are the same as yours. Now, I want you to think about all of the groups in the room. And I want you to divide yourselves into 2 groups. So you're going to spread around the room into 2 groups. And I'm going to back you up and say, this guy's a bay shrimp. I couldn't remember what it was an image of. Sorry. It's a bay shrimp. So it's a little organism that lives in the water. All right. So you're dividing into 2 groups. Once you have divided into 2 groups, I want you to think about what classifications did you use? How did you decide? What were the criteria that helped you decide what 2 groups? Probably you moved all the people who had living items into one side and the non-living or abiotic items onto the other side. If you didn't do that, please rearrange and do that, or think about this organization level. All right. So think about the whole room now. In the whole room, you can see that we had biotic things and we had abiotic things. So what does that make this whole room? It makes us an ecosystem, right? Living and non-living things interacting. All right. It's an ecosystem. The biotic factors interacted with the abiotic factors in that whole environment. Okay. So please return your card. This time you're turning it to Miss Russell if she's in the room, or to our sub who is helping with the class. You're going to return all those cards. Don't bend them, don't crumple them, don't lick them, don't tuck them away. I need them all back, please, for my future classes. All right, so now on your desk you should see this field guide to Fairfax County's plants and wildlife. So you're going to turn to page 4. You're just going to take a minute to skim the information on page 4. I'm not really using this timer for a minute, but that's what it would look like if you were in with me. Okay, so you're going to pause the video, look at page 4, see what you can see. Now you're going to use information on page 4 to answer some questions, all right? At your table, talk about these questions, okay? So you've looked at your field guide, and you can keep looking at your field guide. I want to know, when you were doing that card activity, were you part of a population? Well, you have to know what a population is in order to figure out whether you were part of a population, right? So a population is a group of animals that are the same species, right? So if you were an Atlantic grouper, or if you were that shrimp, I am so sorry for those loud bells. So if you were a shrimp and you were with all the other shrimp, you were a population of shrimp, right? If you were a bay scallop and you were with all the other bay scallops, then that means you were a population of bay scallops. All right, so now let's think about whether you were part of a community. So if you look at the definition of community, that's going to be many different species in the same place, right? So you were part of a community probably once we divided the room into biotic or abiotic, right? So some of you might be thinking, wait, my card doesn't fit here, so hang on, we'll get to you, right? So you were part of a community once we had all of the biotic factors together. So on one side of the room we had those shrimp, and we had the bay scallops, and we had the grouper and the snapping turtle. Okay, so now I want you to think, were you part of an ecosystem when you did that card activity? And the answer for everybody is yes. You were part of the ecosystem because you are either biotic things or you were abiotic things, right? So the only people who were holding cards, the only cards that were not parts of a population or a community were those things that weren't living. So that means that the rocks and sand and the water quality, those things were not part of a population or community because they're not allowed. Not alive. All right. So, clicking. On page 4, this is what you should have seen. Remember, an organism is an individual living thing. Population is all of the organisms of one species in one place at one time. We have a community that's all the populations in one place at one time. And then we have an ecosystem, and that's all of those communities and their interactions with the non-living components. And you've already answered these questions because we just answered them on the last slide. All right, so please get out one copy of the notes from your silver folder on your table. Okay, period 2, your front of your notes looks a lot like this, and the back side has some images. Period 8, your front side looks a lot like this, and your back side looks a lot like this, okay? So for periods 2 and 8, you're gonna have slightly different things. All right, so I'm jumping around a little bit. So period 2, your notes actually look like this, although they're stretched out a little bit better. And so you have some terms that you're going to define, and then you have some examples on how I expect you to fill out the table. So if you look at your notes from the silver folder for period 2, you're going to answer, you're going to define each one of these terms in your own words. Please use your field guide. Right? Please use your notes from last class. Absolutely, that's allowed. And there's a reading called the Pyramid of Life that you can also get from your silver folder, and that's going to give you some information too. All right, so here's an example of how you can fill out your form. So the term might be organism. We can define an organism as one living thing. And some examples, please give me at least 2. Some examples would be something like a bee, a grizzly bear, an oak tree. All right, so for period 2, that's what you're working on. Period 8, we actually have an extra column. So period 2, you can ignore the next section that I talk about. You can just skip right over it. Period 8, you have an additional column here. And so I want you to answer the additional questions on your sheet. Please read through this first example of an answer and notice that it's a full sentence and it's giving me really specific information, and it's clear and it's well thought out, and it's responding to the question that you have in that column. This is for period 8. For all of you, when you are trying to come up with examples of community, so period 2 and period 8, or 3, 5, and 7, for all of you, community is a hard one to come up with examples of. So you might say the community of living things that live on a shrub. So you might be thinking about bugs that live on the shrub. You might be thinking about birds that land on there, or chipmunks that run up and down that area. So community, you're going to have to be a little bit flexible with your thinking and try to come up with a place where you have different types of things, species living together. And it's a little bit hard because a lot of times your ecosystem is also going to have that same word. Just remember that when you're talking about an ecosystem, you mean the living things and the non-living things. When you're talking about community, it's only the living things. All right, so moving on, you're going to be using the field guide. You're going to use this reading called The Pyramid of Life that should be in your silver folder. This is also in Schoology, so you can click on it and read it using the article on Schoology as well. You could probably click on the word Newsella on the left side of your Schoology page, and you could search for the Pyramid of Life article too. All right, so you're using the field guide, mostly page 4, you're using this reading, and you're filling in your notes. Please make sure that you have put your first name and your last name on your notes. And the date for you is either it's probably September 5, or it might have been September 4 if you are an odd class period, and put your period number on there too. All right, so again, your directions. Use the information from your last activity. So when we had those aquatic ecosystem cards, use page 4 of that Fairfax County Field Guide, and also use some information from the reading. You can even use your notes from last class, and I want you to try to answer everything on your page. Remember, period 2, you only have these first 3 columns. Periods 3, 5, 7, 8, you guys have this as well, because we have more time in that class, those classes rather. All right, I'm giving everybody 15 minutes. Since this is an online lesson, you can have this kind of playing in the background while you're working if you'd like, or you can just kind of watch your time, okay? But you do want to fill out all of the boxes on your table completely during class today. For period 2, you only have boxes to fill out on the front side, and then on the back side, you have a couple of boxes, but not a lot. Period 8, you have more boxes to fill because we spread them out differently. So fill out all your information on your pages. Those are your notes. You will keep your notes. You're not turning them in. They're going to live in your binder, but not until later. Okay, work independently on this, and good luck. Raise your hand if you have questions. All right, so period 2, this is the back side of your page. Period 8, you don't have this on your notes, but I want you to try to think of these answers as well. Period 2, you're going to write the answers if you haven't already. All right, so this antelope, this one single antelope, what scientific word could I use to describe him? So in the words that we're talking about right now, we can say he's an organism, or she, it's hard to say. Once I have a whole bunch of antelopes, they're all the same species, right? So we're going to say a bunch of animals that are the same species that are all together in one place at the same time. That's a population. Different species that are in the same place at the same time. So I've got my lions and my vulture and wildebeests or hyenas, whatever those are, and zebras and my antelope. These are all different species, but they're all together in the same place. So remember, living things, when they're all together, it's going to be a community of living things. And then this last image is showing you some water and some rocks and some dirt. Plus I have birds and other animals and elephants, and I have trees and grass. I've got more birds. I have sunlight and clouds and air and all kinds of things. That is our, that's our ecosystem. Okay, so second period, make sure you have these words written down and make sure it makes sense. Okay, so kind of go over them, maybe quiz each other just to make sure you know which word is which thing. Eighth period, you need to know these too. All right, so remember we looked at this picture before. Let's think about populations. We have a population of these little orange fish. They're all probably the same species, right? We have a population of sharks. Okay. Those might be more sharks. I'm not sure what is swimming over there, but if they're the same species, that would be another population. What communities do I see? Well, this whole thing is a community, right? This whole area is a community. It has living things in it. It has the sharks and these fish and at least one snapping turtle and some other swimming things. So that's a community, all the living things in that same space at that same time. Is it an ecosystem? It is indeed. We have living things, plus we have water, and water is abiotic, right? All right. So if you're finished and your notes are completely filled in, this is actually the lesson 1 notes, but your lesson 1 notes and your lesson 2 notes should go in your binder. You may use these notes, though, to complete the exit ticket today. So you can keep them out if you want and put them into your binder right after you finish your exit ticket. Okay, I would suggest that. When you do your exit ticket, you can also use the field guide because it's right there for you. You can use the article. So you'll go to Schoology, go to that blue folder. I want you to go all the way down to the bottom. You are looking for the exit ticket that says U1, that's Unit 1, L2, so it's Lesson 2. Hopefully you already completed U1L1. If you didn't, you should do that today too. Okay, so you're going to do U1L2. This is our ecosystem organization exit ticket. It's 5 questions. Please work independently, that means work by yourself, but you may absolutely use your notes or the field guide. But don't Google it. When I say no other outside resources, I mean don't Google it, please. You get 2 tries. And just a reminder, you do have a quiz next week. It's going to be on ecosystems. So the questions are going to be really similar to the 2 exit tickets you've done. Lesson 1 and Lesson 2 exit tickets. Okay. Also, just make sure to go over your notes. And if you have questions on anything on the notes, ask somebody. Okay. Or ask me right at the beginning of next class. Our quiz in my classes, Mrs. Thomas's classes, it's actually going to be right at the beginning of class on Tuesday and Wednesday. Probably the other science classes in 7th grade are taking it right at the end of class on Friday and Monday. So don't be shocked if you have friends who are taking the quiz Friday and Monday before you do. It's pretty close timing though. All right, great job. So if you have extra time, you can keep looking through that field guide. It has all kinds of great information. You can also check in SIS to see if you have anything that's missing. So here's what I'm going to tell you about SIS. Okay, if you want to know if you have any missing work, you want to go to SIS Student View. All right. You might see these codes. You might see NTI. Remember, that means not turned in. You might see PLD. You're not going to see that yet, but that means past, late, due. If it's too late to turn it in, it's been too long, you can't even turn it in anymore, and so you automatically get 50%. Right now, on the assignments that have been due so far, I do still want you to turn them in. For these first couple of assignments, I'm not taking any points off if they're late, as long as you turn them in. So please get them done. Make sure I know you've gotten them done. But soon we will start taking points off if you turn things in late. I just want to make sure you understand how SIS works, and I want to make sure you understand where to turn things in. All right, so how do you get into SIS? You can go into Schoology, and there should be a place in there where you can do student view account access. Or you can actually go to the search bar on your Chromebook, and you can type in SIS, which is S-I-S, right here, S-I-S, and then you can start typing the word student, and it'll give you a link. When you get there, it's going to look like this, and you're going to put in your student username and password, and then you'll click login. Okay, you'll see your grades if you click on the class. First, you have to click on Gradebook over on the left side. You're going to click on Gradebook, and then it'll show you all of your classes, and it'll show your grades right away. But if you want to know specifically what grades you have in science, you'll click on the words Life Science, and then it should show you any assignment that I have already graded. Okay. If you have questions about SIS or anything, if you're in second period, email me or Miss Russell. If you are in 8th period, please just email me. Miss Russell will answer you, but she will probably answer you and say, check with Mrs. Thomas. And when you have questions, make sure you are polite and you include all the information that's going to help me. So I want to know your name, what class period you're in, and what's the assignment you have a question about. Okay, and then I'm happy to update SIS if you got a better score that I didn't record or something. We'll talk more about that. All right, student view access, it looks like this. I would type in SIS and then start typing the word student, and it should pull up for you if you're in the search bar. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that we're going to do on, let's see, on Thursday in second period and 8th period. You do have a quiz next week on either Tuesday if you're a blue day, odd class period, or Wednesday if you're an even day. So thank you so much for working on all of this. And if you have extra time, you may read, you may work on homework from another class, you may rest, but please make sure you keep your noise level down. You are all fantastic. Thanks for watching this whole thing. I appreciate it.